This episode will cover the political implication of this situation. People would rightfully say that religion is the problem in Africa. Yeah, they have an idea of what the problem is, but it isn't really religion. Like I said, ideas are formed to give us a sense that there is meaning in the world and there is meaning in our lives, and they are formed to create a form of society. They create society by default because ideas cannot be believed in an interpersonal vacuum. When the priest raises up a tray of baked breads in an oven and he says, "This is the body of Christ." The reason why you are convinced, you yourself can be convinced it is the body of Christ, is because you can share that imagination that it is the body of Christ. Try all you want, you can't convince a monkey that the bread is the body of Christ. You can't convince a monkey that a piece of banana is the body of Christ. No. They can't share that subjective imagination with us. So these beliefs we have create a form of society that we call Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba. So when someone says religion is a problem of the society, it isn't completely right, because the terror I mentioned that we feel when we encounter people who do not share our beliefs can only be experienced when we encounter people who do not share our beliefs. So religion in itself can be a good thing for a group of people because it actually creates a sense of unity. It creates a sense of self-esteem. The problem arises when we meet people and we have to live with people who do not share our beliefs. And what are the political implications of this? I will share some examples. This video is recorded post the slaughter in Syria that I predicted would happen, just like it happened in Libya, just like it happened in Iraq, just like it happened in Rwanda before Paul Kagame, and I will explain why. When countries were colonized, they say the sharing or the Berlin Conference, where countries were divided and shared among European countries, they were not created with the history of these countries in mind. And sometimes, in the case of the British, they created these countries because it will bring instability and it would be easier to exploit the resources in the country. Like I said, the basic foundation of economic progress in any country is cultural stability. And when countries don't have cultural stability, they have a problem. I will explain to you how countries have managed cultural stability. There are three ways to do it. Three known ways to do it. One, it is stability achieved by ethnic homogeneity. That is, that only a single ethnicity live in a country, develops in the country. Of course, there are migration around the world right now, but that is basically the idea. One single ethnicity managing the affairs of the country. Like South Korea, like Japan, like France was, like Germany was. The second way is to pretend like you are multiracial or multi-ethnic. That is in the case of America. Like America used to have a huge population, a very huge population of whites that dominated the country, and about 80 something plus. But it is changing, which is why they are now crying about cultural instability and the decline of Western civilization, the replacement of white in America. And France also imported some Arabs, which is causing cultural problems in the country. And I hope you can actually get the place this is going to. But if you have a group of people, a group of ethnic group, or a group of race that can actually stabilize the country can be culturally stable politically. So the first way is to have an ethnically or racially homogeneous country. The second way is to have a country that has 80%, 90% of an ethnic group or race that culturally and democratically stabilizes the country. The best way for this to happen is to have a huge population that is financially dominant, culturally dominant, and democratically they will just elect their own, like America. America is more probable to actually have more white president than black ones or Hispanic ones. The third one is to have an irregular dimension of ethnic group. No one having 50% of the population, no one having 40, like Libya. But there is an authoritarian that stabilizes the country. There are examples of this. Singapore was authoritarian under Lee Kuan Yew, and he arrested dissent, arrested his political opponent, jailed anyone who didn't agree with him, but he was benevolent to his population. Libya also had some stability when Gaddafi was the president, and Iraq had stability when Saddam Hussein was the president. Syria, the recent case, had stability, some stability when Assad was the president. But when you remove the authoritarian, ethnic groups go to war with each other. An example is this, that we have experienced. The civil war we experienced here in Nigeria highlight that problem. But before I go there, I would like to repeat again how countries can be stabilized. The first one is to have an ethnically homogeneous country. The second one is to have a country that has a huge dominated race, population-wise, financially-wise. And the third one is to have an irregular ethnic group, but there is an authoritarian that actually unites the country. Examples of ethnically homogeneous countries are Japan, Korea, and Germany. Sweden is changing, and you can see when these countries actually change, they experience some ethnically and cultural problem. They especially racial tensions, like France. France has been having its own racial issues due to Islam. The same thing in Sweden. Sweden is having problems due to Islam. Americans, the whites in America, are actually aside themselves, but they have convinced themselves that they own the country, so they are having problems with other Hispanics, other blacks. They say it is the white culture that will prevail, that must prevail. You see, when these countries actually get introduced other cultures, they have problems that have stayed with real multi-ethnic countries like Nigeria. A real multi-ethnic country that are categorized as a real multi-ethnic country is a country that does not have a huge population of an ethnic group stabilizing the country. Nigeria doesn't have 50% of any ethnic group in Nigeria. The people in Singapore, the Chinese in Singapore, are actually aside as the indigenous Malays are 15%. So these are real multi-ethnic countries. Libya also, the same thing in Libya. They are really multi-ethnic countries. Shia and Sunni are about 40% in Iraq. The same thing in Libya. So the same thing in Syria. So how do we actually unite this country? The basics, the foundation of this problem is different belief about the nature of reality. Different beliefs about the nature of reality. If you are the country with only Sunni, you can be safe. You can make progress. If you have a country with only Shias, you can be safe and you can make progress. If you have a country made of Druze, if you had a country made of Igbos, if you had a country made of Hausa people only, if you had a country made of Fulani people, you can be safe, you can make progress, irrespective of how disastrous the ideas are. I've heard things like, there is money ritual in this country, how could the country make progress? Just count the number of money ritual in southwest Nigeria and the number of homicides in America, and you will see that the homicide rates in America actually eclipse the number of deaths, money ritual deaths in Nigeria. So these are not basic problems. These ideas of we killing each other and all, they are not basic problems. You can actually make progress with high level of homicide like you have in America. You can make real progress. But if it is because someone believes that God is better than others, you can't. It affects the politics. And what is the solution? The solution is to have a story that is all our story. A story that we accept is all our story. That we can actually believe in, that gives meaning to all our lives. This requires that we reanalyze and we revise how we find values in our lives to actually find an objective ground. We don't need to have a similar culture, but we need a similar value system. What do we value? Do we value meritocracy? Do we value sincerity? Do we value honesty? These are things that we can debate, we can argue about, that we can demonstrate are the best ways to live life. You don't have to wear my clothes. You don't have to. As long as you don't wear my clothes and say it is your clothes. You see? You don't have to actually believe in my God. As long as I have the right to criticize your God and you have the right to criticize my God, and we have a set of system that acknowledge the freedom of belief, the freedom of worship, and the freedom to actually disbelieve. There are ways, and this is where my own work, my own independent work actually comes in debunking the belief in the supernatural, in actually setting up a framework outside of that. After debunking, let us say we're all atheists. Does the belief system empty itself? No. We have to create a philosophy to actually unite the country, which is where I come in, which is basically where I come in, and debunking the supernatural. Because when we are discussing the foundation of our values and our belief system, the meaning to our lives, that it is impossible to not have a conversation on the nature of reality, on the nature of human, and the belief in the supernatural, which is why this belief in the supernatural has to become liberal before we can actually create a value system that works in Nigeria. And this series doesn't stop here. I will continue talking about my own philosophy and how I think we can actually find an objective ground.